We'll stay with that issue because supporting someone who was convicted of raping a child to stay in Australia, that's the latest outcome of Andrew Giles' disastrous time as Australia's Immigration Minister. Now, that's on top of letting more than 150 foreign criminals out of detention into the community, even though the High Court said only one needed to be released. And even with the laws passed last year to lock them all up again, failing to lodge a single application, that's for a preventative detention order, when he can. That's the litany of failure. Add in the fact that under his now notorious Ministerial Direction number 99, the instrument that Giles put out there that's now been used by the Administrative Appeals Tribunal to keep another foreign criminal, not the child rapist this time, but someone who allegedly stabbed someone to death on Mother's Day. Add all that up, and what's crystal clear is that under this government and under this minister, Peter Dutton's former policy of sending foreign criminals back to their home countries, well, that's now completely abandoned. Minister Giles will allow any criminal, it would seem, who can avoid deportation by merely demonstrating a substantial connection to Australia to stay. And that's what's happened in this case, where a Kiwi man who was never a citizen of Australia was allowed to stay despite raping his 14-year-old stepdaughter while his partner was in hospital giving birth. He said time in Australia gave him special rights. The tribunal looked at the ministerial direction from Giles. They agreed with the child rapist, and now he's been allowed to stay here. Now, this man is not an Australian citizen, but he gets to stay here because of Labor. But as well as abandoning Dutton's policy of deporting foreigners who abuse privileges of living here by committing serious crimes, what's also been abandoned is any concept of ministerial responsibility and any concept too of prime ministerial authority. Now, how many mistakes does Giles have to make before he gets sacked? And how often does the Prime Minister have to wash his hands of a problem before the public conclude he's not doing his job? Anthony Albanese can't sack Andrew Giles because when it comes to border protection weakness, Giles and Albanese are clones of each other. Both out of the left faction, both soft on boat turnbacks, both weak on borders. Likewise, the PM can't clearly condemn anti-Semitism. He can't clearly be on the side of Israel against Hamas because he's still the student trot, the young MP who was always protesting against Israel. That's why he never reins in Penny Wong either. He knows that a big majority of Australians think that foreign criminals should leave Australia. He knows that most Australians too support Israel, the only democracy in the Middle East, against the terrorist group Hamas. But because he's so out of step with mainstream Australia, his government's effectively paralysed, with individual ministers running out their own hard left agendas while the PM sits on the fence or at the theatre or at the tennis, wherever he is, anywhere but behind his desk, and says it's none of his business. Now, honestly, this is more like an activist collective than it is a cohesive government, saddled with a Prime Minister who is weak and out of his depth. And it's going to just get worse before the next election, particularly if Labor is forced into a formal coalition with the Greens. That's what the latest polling reports. They'll do deals on preferences. We know that will happen. I'll get into that polling with Dennis Shanahan in a moment, but I worked for the opposition leader during the last hung parliament. The whole fiasco of Gillard and Brown. The last time Labor sold its soul to the Greens in order to survive, and I tell you what, it was a shocking time for our country. I hope Australians wake up, because a vote for Labor this time round is a vote for the Greens. And given all the challenges we have facing this country, an Albanese-banned government would be disastrous.